And welcome. Hey, and there's Mr. Matt Secret
Oh,
Vault. Look at that. That secret. He's so secret. Look at he's
the
stealthy
three
secret.
the three Baldies
Three,
show is finally
the,
on live.
the three Baldies show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, speak for yourself. I'm far more bald than any of you two. So,
No, that doesn't include shaving your eyebrow, huh?
but yeah, by accident, it's grown back. But yeah,
It's grown back. Hey, Safari, how are you? So how are we doing there? Like, how's this summer going along there, Alex?
Here?
It just started, right?
Yeah. Fuck it.
Oh man.
It was bad today.
What?
It's bad today.
Bad today?
The weather.
Crappy day?
Yeah, the
Oh
weather.
well,
It's
well
fucking shitty.
it's been raining like crap.
Yeah.
I don't know what's it like over there, Matt. Like, what's the weather been like?
oh, it's been really hot. Like uh, crazy, sort of hide away out of the sun. That's because I get bad hay fever symptoms, in the heat. So it's been a go out and duck and dive, and then come back in and sort of sit in front of the air conditioner. Yeah.
Yeah, it's T storms here, and it's all weekend, pretty
Mm.
much. Today, this morning, actually, yesterday wasn't too bad. It was pretty hot though. It's like
It was
Hmm.
I
all
think
right.
it was like 31, something like
Yeah.
that, 31, something like that. I don't know,
It was too
but no
fucking
rain.
hot.
Yeah, since
That's what it was. It was too fucking hot. Yeah.
exactly, too
Yeah.
fucking hot.
Yeah.
And people are going nuts. People are this morning. I was showing Alex a. Here we go. I gotta play. This is hilarious. uh,
Yeah.
the perils of fentanyl. Just
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what's he on? Yeah.
yeah. Oh, he
Either
was
fentanyl
pretty.
or bath salts.
Oh,
Uh,
honestly, it was. Hey, Pete Sanderson, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, it's just more and more and more and more, and you think you only see this stuff on like TikTok and other things, but it's out there. It's
yeah.
bad in some areas, just absolutely.
Yeah, I saw the comment.
Yeah. Uh,
I swear he was playing scratch and sniff with himself.
Mm.
uh,
I can't remember what I ate last night. Let me take a whiff.
yeah, I know. Can never understand. Well, I mean, what was going through his brain. But anyways, Matt, you just recently put up a Sikh temple, abandoned Sikh temple.
I think it was Sikh. Um,
Sikh.
yeah, Indian temple. I don't read those squiggly languages, so I don't know enough about it. So
The Explorer?
Yeah, it was quite good. We were wandering around. We'd just been to see a nightclub location, and we were going from there to another location, and I suggested we maybe climb up some scaffolding to see whether we could get into this building that looked like it had windows open. And so Jordan just literally just sort of grabs the nearest Harris fence and just starts to climb it, going chang chang like that. And it's like, Jesus, no, no, don't do that, because it's too noisy. Just like, let's find a way to get up there where we don't make noise. And as we were saying that, the building that was right next to us, which wasn't where we were intending to go, had a door open. So we just went in, and that was the Sikh temple.
Wow.
So yeah.
How do you know how long it was abandoned for, or how long it's been abandoned for?
Nope, because I'm
No?
so good with my research. I just couldn't be bothered looking. Thought the mystery. I mean the laziness. I mean the authentic. It's more authentic when you don't know. Yeah, because I couldn't be bothered to look. So yeah, yes, that's my excuse.
I think later on this week we're going to do some drone footage of the Tremaine house, Alex.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Probably going to start that up on
Paranormal Patrick's
Thursday.
gonna do the drone.
He's gonna work the drone, and we're gonna get the drone footage in, and then get the updated look at this interesting little location where two women perished, ended their lives in very, very uniquely. Oh, I shouldn't say very uniquely fashion, but I mean
Did they
mysterious
hang themselves?
fashion was. So both of them hung themselves.
Yeah.
One from the TV antenna, which I just find, wow, how how do you get up there? And then all of a sudden, in the, what was it, the other one um happened about 15 years later, I think it was 15 years later after the first one, and the second one was in the horse barn. In fact, you can still see the police tape is still in there, part just flapping in the wind. Eerie, very eerie.
Very eerie.
Yeah, very, very, very eerie like. And I must say,
I was
I
gonna
don't
say a
know what.
morbid joke, but I'll leave it alone.
Since when do you leave
That's
it
true.
alone to a morbid joke?
Well, you're saying something about the police tape, flapping around. I go same as the body.
Well, yeah, unfortunately. What is it with farmhouses, Matt?
Weird people sometimes, inbred. Yeah, everyone kind of figures that they, they're farmers, so you just leave them alone. Don't ask any questions. They're farmers. And then, sometimes they're good, upstanding people, and sometimes they're just degenerate, kind of, uh, yeah, don't really know how to look after the place and let it run into the ground. Yeah.
I
So,
mean,
yeah,
it seems. Sorry, go
50
ahead.
50 50 50, isn't it? Like, is it going to be a nice place, or is it going to be an absolute shithole where, they probably were like living in their own feces? Yeah.
Yeah, and you've
I can concur with that.
yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because you were living on a farm
Yep.
for a while.
For 4 years, and
Yeah.
some of the neighbors, you could almost argue were living in squalor.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I mean, in some areas, that lifestyle is like it's almost all but gone. And all you have left are these empty shells, these abandoned empty shells, as a subtle reminder of what life used to be like.
Yeah. The good old days, like, was it the Clampets What was it that struck the
Gold.
Oil.
gold?
Green
that's it, yeah.
Acres is the way to play.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Farm living is the life for me.
Yeah.
Land spreading out so far and wide.
Yeah.
Keep just give me that countryside. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one. Yeah.
Yeah. And, these places had, land for miles and miles, many of them.
Mhm.
And they had so much land that, obviously they didn't use it all. And you kind of wonder, okay, so why do you need all that land if you're not going to use it all? I mean, sure, a lot of them did use a lot of it for farming and that, but a lot of them, they had a lot of empty space.
Yeah. And they get pretty possessive, these farming types. So, don't go on my land. It's like, well, what are you using it for? What are you using that bit over there for? Nothing. What are you using that hill for? Nothing. You might be using a field for some cows, or you might be growing some crops, but the rest of it, but no, keep off all of it. All of it. All of it. It's mine.
Alex, were you like that?
I lived in the middle of fucking nowhere. There's barely anybody walking around there.
And talk about in the middle of nowhere, brutally cold at times.
Oh yeah, it was a massive culture shock.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It was a massive culture shock for you coming
Yeah.
from Italy,
Yeah.
but you're more central to northern.
Yeah, but it's still the coldest that ever got there was like maybe -3-4 degrees. To go from that to
Minus
Manitoba
40.
where it gets to -40.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big culture shock.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
There's no tumbleweeds.
Oh fuck. It was brutal. I mean, it was like flat land beyond flat land, right? I mean, put it this way: it was so flat that on a clear day you could actually see the slight curvature of the planet because there was nothing impeding your way because we lived in the prairies, right? So there was literally nothing there.
It's like that stretch between northern part of Ontario, border with Manitoba, and then all the way over to pretty much to stretching to BC. It's like, oh, there's nothing around at all.
Oh, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, there's definitely nothing around.
Oh
When
yeah.
you get to Alberta, halfway through, at least you run into like the Rockies and you get some scenery.
Yeah.
right?
True.
But
The Rockies.
Saskatchewan and Manitoba are like, oh man, pretty bad. It's a long lost farmer calling.
That would be a pretty good doorbell.
Yeah. And with that, they were gone. Because that's going to keep happening now. Now that I put a little advert on just saying I'm over here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get all the messages now.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, it's
not anymore though. That was the extent of it because it's not going to be happening now. Yeah.
Living on a farm and the way it used to be as opposed to now. Obviously now, I don't want to harp too much on it, but it's it's all basically corporate now. A lot of it's corporate. If it's not corporate, it's corporate infused, or it's, hey Gareth, how are you? Good to see you, man. It's corporate controlled or influenced.
Livestock, yes, definitely. Livestock is more so than and even like crops for sure. But I mean, like livestock is, and it seems to be more controlled in the U.S. than it is in Canada. Although, that could be, I could be wrong on that, right? But I know that, for example, down in the U.S., a lot of the livestock farming is controlled by, one or two major players.
Yeah. I guess a lot of it's like pretty much the same over there, Matt, with farming now.
Yeah, a lot of the land is owned by the Crown and is rented back through various front organizations to kind of make it appear like it's not owned by the Crown, but it's owned by the crown. So they keep it a bit removed from actually saying you're paying your rent directly to the queen, or now as it is the king. But yeah, so I think the biggest landowners in the United Kingdom are the church, the military, and the crown.
Oh wow.
And then there are some small bits that are privately owned, truly privately owned, but the most of it is kind of, when you really get down to it, it's rented from somebody, So very little is truly privately owned, and even the large areas of farmland, which are sort of military, the crown or the church, all of those bits are probably largely commercial. You've got farmers on there that are sort of either teaming up, like a couple of farms team up together and work, or you've got super farms that
Yeah.
own like thousands of acres of land, and you wouldn't, when you speak to them about it, they always try to tell you that they own the land, it's their land, and you have to say to them, well, is it really your land, or are you renting it from the crown? And then they get a bit pissy then, because of course they want you to think it's their land, because they want to act like kings and queens themselves. So they're like, no, it belongs to us, it's our land. So well, that's funny, because I mean, all the other farms around here are all renting, from the crown, and you must be the only one here that's not, which is weird, isn't it? Because like, why would you be the only one that's not when everything else is? And they don't like it, because you kind of burst their little bubble, their bullshit lie, and you say, well, get off my land. It's like, well, no, get off the Queen's land. It's not your land. It's not, you're renting it. If I paid enough money, I could rent it and kick you off. So
I know. I know a lot of the land now. A lot of farming land, especially farming land, it has been bought up by a couple of the major railroad companies, and they basically will lease the land for for rental or lease or whatever, until they have no need for it anymore, and then they'll sell it off, and then some big mega housing corporation will come in and say, oh, let's put a residential area in here and slap up some cookie cutter homes, and it's really bad here for that now. And it's really a shame, because a lot of these very a lot of these houses, farmhouses, I mean, they have character. Really, if you're able to buy it and put a little bit of money into these homes, they'd be awesome. They're solid. I mean, obviously weathered, but I mean, come on, you put a little bit of money in there, there's no reason why they can't be solid again.
yeah, a lot of these places are owned from so much up on high that the people who actually own them, not like the farmers who will be working around these abandoned houses, but the people who actually own them, they've got no interest in selling them, doing them up. They just rather keep them empty, because it's that's the way their mentality is. If you approach them and offer them money for them, it may not be, you can't ask the farmer, because it doesn't actually belong to him. So he'd say, oh well, if you want to do that, you have to speak to who actually owns it. And then when you speak to them, they say, well, we don't really own it, you'll have to speak to them because they own it. And then you keep going up and up and up until you come to the crown, and the crown will just be like, oh, Farmhouse, who are you? Have you got royalty in your who are you? And if you've got some sort of like connection to you're a Freemason, or you're part of the old boys club, they might let you have it, and they might not even charge you any money for it. You could buy it for £1, but anyone else, it would be like, well, yeah, £1 million. You go, well, it's not worth that. And they go, yeah, but we don't want you. We don't want you here. We don't want anyone here. We'd rather keep it empty. It's for us and our friends, or nobody at all at any price. So
There you go, Alex. Maybe you can twist some arms and get yourself a nice from some of the good old boys.
Yeah. I'll use my connections.
What's that?
I'll use my connections.
Your connections, yes. Twist some arms and grab a nice plot of land. Yeah, it's go ahead, Matt.
we can't do like you were saying. Somewhere we'll say, well, we bought this land, it now belongs to us, we own it, so we're going to build houses on it. You can't do that in the UK because every area comes down through the control planning for that area will come down through the council. So they will have the say so on where things can be built and where things can't be built. And in general, green areas, which are, is farmland, forests, anything like that, will be, you cannot build on this unless you get special permission. Well, how do you get special permission? If you're a normal human mortal, you will never get permission. If you are one of the chosen few, the royalty, or got connections, yeah, they'll let you build there, but they won't let you build 100 houses. They might let you build one house, but asking for permission to even rebuild an old house in an area, they would rather let it rot and turn back to Greenland, and say, well, it's all green now. Everything's green, so it's wonderful. You say, but there's already been a house there. So all I'm doing is just, I want to build a house on somewhere where there used to be a house. And they're like, oh, no, we'd rather have it green. So you got to have special connections, special, if you were lucky and you applied and waited a couple of years and had pulled the right strings, palmed off the right people, you might, if you're just lucky, be able to do it. But in general, the only places you can, green, there we are, green belt land, bribes taken with brown envelopes, so you can't just say, nobody's using this land, I'd like to go here. They won't let you build on it. And the only places they will let you build usually around the edges of already existing towns and villages, and they only allow them to expand at a very, very slow rate. And one of the biggest problems we've got is that there's loads of people needing homes, but they won't allow any expansion into green areas of land. So you can build and build and build in town areas because they're not classed as green belts. But the only way you can do that is by knocking down one house and putting in 4 small ones, or going up with a tower and this sort of thing, because they just don't want any more encroachment into the countryside. And it's very silly because there's plenty of countryside. I mean, there's more countryside than there is city, in the UK. But it's treated as kind of like the domain of the kings, the queens, the special people, and everyone else, you stick to the cities. We're not having you out in the countryside. So yeah,
they got the brown, or sorry, the green belt scenario here as well, and there's slow encroachment on it. But I mean, the problem with here is that 90% of the population is along the border, right across the U.S., along Canada-U.S. border. And so, I mean, for instance, here in, Southern Ontario, I mean, you're looking at, a big chunk of that population alone in Canada. Because, I mean, Canada's got such a small population.
A good chunk of Canada's population is in where we live.
Yeah. So but now you're getting they're getting to the point where they don't want to build in certain areas because of that encroachment. So they're doing exactly that. They're tearing down old areas or existing areas that look at, hey, it's a parcel of land, let's use it. You know, there was probably a plaza there. Oh, tear it down, put four condos and
Doing a lot of townhomes too.
a lot of townhomes, a lot
Yeah.
of condos. I think what is it? One of the more controversial mayoral candidates there, Chris Guy. Are you familiar with him, Chris? Or sorry, Alex, are you familiar with
Which
Chris
guy?
Guy?
Which?
Chris Guy.
No.
He has this scenario where what they're doing now is they're building these districts, if you will. They're called districts, and literally they're buildings that have at the top you have housing like condos, regular condos. In the middle they have business, and at the bottom they have storefronts and blah blah blah. Needs for everybody in the building. So essentially, what they're trying to keep is people contained within this complex, if you will, without
Yeah, they got
having to leave.
everything in one place.
Everything in one building, right? So
Yeah.
no need to leave. Even in fact, they've got it down to the formula where there's not even parking lots for parking, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, okay, well you can't go anywhere. You can't drive, but you can take public transit though.
Which fucking sucks over here.
Oh, it's horrible here.
Yeah.
It's horrible. But I mean that's just the way it's going. I mean, there in the UK, Matt. I mean, you guys have been doing this for so many more years, but yet you've managed to keep, green spaces and everything else. Us, we have plenty of green space, but the close green space is being gobbled up. Just gobbled up.
You're gonna have
So
to go north.
You have to go north to get any. I mean, it's not quite as bad yet, but it's getting there. It's sprawling. I mean, it's with immigration now and everything else, it's sprawling.
Yep. I'll be right back. I'm gonna get a refill.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's
Well, I think we just had this recent suggestion that they're going to be building a lot of places for immigrants, camps and things like this, because refugees, are being housed in hotels all up and down the UK at a massive cost. They said it was 6 million a day they were spending on it. In fact, wow. It's actually come out now. It's more like 16 million a day. So they weren't telling the truth about how much it actually costs, and so it's I can't remember what the new figure is. It was like a couple of billion a year, but now it's something like 30 billion a year. It's going to cost just to keep people in refugees in rented accommodations, and that takes away the ability for people who are trying to buy a home for the first time, because there are no homes. There are no homes. There's very few places to rent, and this keeps the prices incredibly high. So people can't afford to rent. But then the councils are screaming out saying we want to be able to build in these green areas. We want to move out. We want to expand. But we're not allowed to because the government has set limits for what we can do. So they'll blame the government, and say, oh, it's the government are limiting what we can do, but we want to expand because everyone needs houses in the area. And then deals are struck to kind of expand a little bit, but the rate that the houses are being built is very slow, and it's just at the rate that they build them, it's never enough to kind of handle the new births, the immigration refugee amounts. It's just not enough to cover it. So it's a kind of crazy situation where if you're a refugee, you're more likely to be allowed to rent a house, or one will be sorted out for you, than somebody who's naturally born in the UK and has paid tax all their life, works, pays tax, has less ability to get somewhere to live and rent than somebody who's just jumped on a boat, come across the channel from France, loses their passport and their ID on the way, and then either gets put up in a hotel or gets preferential choice for housing over people who are sort of born and lived their whole lives in the UK. So it's a kind of a twisted system, and yeah, so they've been saying, well, we're going to build camps now. They were going to put the immigrants in old military bases, but there's only so many old military bases, and they're obviously mothballed. They're in pretty bad state of repair. They need work done on them, and there's a limited amount of those. So even if you did all of those up, I think they were saying like most of these military bases are about 500 people they could accommodate, and there's maybe only about 20 of these military bases that could get done. So 20 by 500, that's 10,000 people. Well, you're getting more than 10,000 people a year coming into the UK. So
Jeez.
yeah, so and the people who are already here in hotels and making up those numbers, you've still got like 1 million or more that need homes because they're in hotels, and they're in rented homes, so they're taking up the homes that other people would like to have but can't. So they'd have to be building new military bases, but they're not military bases, they're camps, they're going to call them now.
Mhm.
They're going to have to be building these places, and some of them are going to be porter cabins, just temporary constructions, like a caravan, right through to having tents, they're saying. So they're going to be housing immigrants that are coming in tent communities. So some people are saying, oh well, that's just going to be like the Calais situation, because in Calais in France, they have these whole areas which are just nothing but tents, people living in tents, and a lot of people want to cross the channel because they know, well, at least I'll be living in a hotel or a house. Whereas if I'm in France, I'm living in a tent. So that's why everybody wants to come across to the UK, because they know they'll get preferential treatment. They'll get a place, a house or a hotel in front of somebody, say, who's homeless, living on the streets, but is from the UK. They'll get preferential treatment. So British homeless, you can stay homeless. If you come across in a boat, or we put you in a hotel, or we give you a house. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's pretty much
Same
kind
here.
of, kind of like that here. Exactly. I mean, the homeless are, you can stay homeless. Yeah, it will just move you, and sweep you under the rug.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that a lot of them, even if they were given a handout or a place to stay, would they take it? Probably not.
Some of them wouldn't.
No, some of them, are look at I chose this way. That's fine. Which is kind of look at people get that way. People, lose their lust for life, if you will, and just don't give a shit. They just rather live off the grid and say "fuck you,"
Yeah.
right? So
I suppose it's not so bad in places where it's warm enough to be able to live outdoors,
yeah,
but when
Definitely not
you
that here.
start,
no,
yeah, in winter time, it's not so fun living outdoors in a tent in the UK. You could do it, but it's rough. But they'll still say that somebody living in a tent in sub-zero conditions has less status than somebody who's just come across on a boat, from France or wherever. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously a lot of that has to do with international fucking pressure, because I mean, the country doesn't want to look like the bad guy going, oh fuck, look what they're doing to their, these refugees and these immigrants and shit like that, right? I mean, there's so much publicity now when a country says, we don't want you, get the fuck out of here, and you're obviously you're pegged the bad guy automatically. and there's so much pressure put on that country to say, hey, do the right thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, Britain is certainly an easy touch, though,
Yeah.
because you know it's hard for people who are, say, not working to get government money. You know, you have to apply for it. You have to show that you can't work or whatever before you'll get given money. Whereas refugees, immigrants will be given money, no questions asked. They don't have to kind of prove why they can or can't work. In fact, they're probably not allowed to work, because they haven't got their status as like a citizen, or not allowed to permanently stay, so they're not allowed to work. But a lot of them they'll go off from their hotels and from their houses, and they'll be working. And there's been lots of little exposés shown about this sort of stuff. You get they work in car washes, and they got this nobody can speak English. They follow them home. Camera teams have followed them back to the hotel, but legally they're not allowed to be working because they're getting free government money, because of their immigration refugee status. So they're working on top of that. So so they've got two incomes coming in, and then you'll get them protesting, saying, "Oh, this isn't good enough." This hotel I'm staying in, we're not happy with the food. We're not happy with the accommodation. It's not good enough. This house you've given me, it's not good enough. And there's protests going on. So the refugees want even more money, even more status. And it's kind of like, but if you natural born and you say, well, I'd like to be put on a housing list for a house, some sort of council house or whatever, you move to the back of the pile. And you say, well, I would like money, and they'll say, well, we're not going to give you money if you don't have a house. So it's a catch-22. Like, well, how can we give you money if you don't have a house? Because without a house, we can't send you bills. We can't charge you council tax, which is obligatory for everybody in the UK has to pay council tax. But if you're homeless, well, you're not paying council tax, so you're not part of the system. So we don't want to give you money, and we don't want to give you a house. So it's like you're stuck in this sort of like catch-22 loop that exists. But if you're illegally entering the country, you get given money without having to have any of that. You don't have to have state ID. You don't have to have a national insurance number, which is like your social security tax system. You just get taken care of automatically without having to have any proof of where you live, and having to have an actual address so that you can be taxed, and all the bills can be sent to you at an address. You just bypass all that.
So let me ask you a question, Matt. Are they accepting Canadian refugees?
Well, yeah, I suppose if you say that you've been the victim of human trafficking, or that the country you come from is dangerous and that your life was under threat, then or slave traded, like
Steve was slave trading me not too long ago, so I mean, I want to get out of here.
Yeah. But I mean, when it actually comes down to it, most of these people actually coming from countries that there's no oppressive regime, their lives aren't at risk, then they're just coming to the UK because they know it's easy money, and less questions asked. So I mean, in a strange way, if you were to say, I'm fleeing Canada because of political persecution, I fear for my life, and they'd say, well, the immigration people would then say, yeah, but Canada's a safe country, so how can that possibly be true? And you go, well, it is. I've been slave traded. I'm kind of like I'm suffering. They were abusing me in Canada, and they go, oh well, okay, that's fine. And it's absolute nonsense, because a lot of the countries that like Albania, a lot of Albanians coming over for some reason. There's no wars in Albania. Nobody's in gulags, and nobody's a political prisoner. They're they're just coming across because they know they can illegally.
There's a lot of Albanians in Italy as well.
Yeah, they know they can illegally work, stay outside the tax system, not pay tax. So they just get to keep all the money they earn, and they also get the government give them money and accommodation as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know now, even immigration here, it's, you come from, say, you come from the UK and you want to relocate here, you literally have to jump through hoops now. Whereas before it was hop, skip, and a jump, no problem, right? But now it's hard.
If you want to come
You
here
know,
legally, yes.
yeah, I mean, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but any of the traditional countries that were, high in the immigration status for
Sorry.
years, the UK, Germany,
Yeah.
France, whatever, and now it's just it's so hard for them because they're accepting obviously more the, here in India and countries like India and places like that, the Middle East, and it's just
Cheaper labor.
well, that's what it is. Cheap
Yeah.
labor.
So
People who
that's
are
what it
looking
boils
to
down
fill.
to.
People are willing to work at
It's yeah, and it's also the type of jobs that these people are willing to work over what Europeans are willing to work.
Yeah.
Right. So you
Yeah.
have people coming from quote unquote third world countries who are willing to do the jobs that everybody else doesn't want to do. Right. And that's why it's a lot. Like when we emigrated to Canada in '82, the easiest way for us to get into the country was to buy farmland and become farmers. That was the easiest way for us to immigrate in the '80s, right? And that's how we were able to get in and get status, and eventually, I got my citizenship. But yeah, if we had tried to immigrate to Ontario right away, it would have been much more difficult. But because we were willing to be farmers, no problem. My dad bought some land in Manitoba. We became farmers for 4 years, and then we moved to Ontario.
what were you farming?
Wheat, barley. We also had raised cattle, pigs, you name it. We had 1,100 acres.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, quite a bit of land.
Yeah, Manitoba. It would have been, I guess, easier to get into Manitoba than Ontario, though, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That kind
Well,
of land.
just to get into the country, it
Yeah.
was
Sorry.
easier to do it that way than just to emigrate to Ontario right away and try to find a job. You know what I mean? It was much more difficult. So that's the route we took. Plus, my dad really enjoyed farming. Even in Italy, he owned a farm as well.
Mhm.
So he enjoyed it.
So
Made
yeah,
sense.
so it wasn't foreign to him. He knew what he was
Yeah.
doing, sort of thing. It's not like you had to learn. Well, I mean, you probably had to learn some tactics and stuff like that are a little,
Well,
slightly different.
one thing you had to learn definitely was to navigate the colder weather. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, the environment was a little bit more
Yeah.
harsher. So, what was easier to grow and the seasons that they grow in, sort of thing. Yeah, it's yeah, it certainly has changed. That's for sure. Now, I don't know. Is that even a thing now? Where they is that? Do you think that's still a thing? I don't know if that's still a thing, Alex.
I don't know if it's still a thing. There's not as much emphasis nowadays on farming for stuff like wheat and all that stuff. Like the land that we had in Manitoba, 3/4 of it was used for crop, and about a quarter of it was used for raising cattle. Now, because we still own the land and we're leasing it out, um, the people who have been leasing it out since we moved out from in '86
Mm-hmm.
are using all of it for raising cattle.
Oh wow!
All 1,100 acres, or about 1,000 acres, right? So I think there's more emphasis in that now than there is in. I mean, I'm not going to say there's no crops. Obviously, there's got to be some crops, but I think the emphasis is not there as much as it used to be. It's more livestock.
Yeah, Manitoba is so harsh too. Fuck,
It is. Yeah.
so harsh. I mean,
I mean,
growing. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I know. I was going to say some areas are going to be good for crop growing. Where it's hotter all year round, and I suppose America is the kind of classic example of that. But
Mhm.
you know, half of the year or 3/4 of the year you can't grow anything. You know,
No.
it's but you can keep animals.
Yep.
You know, not that the animals are probably happy in the really, you know, harsh cold conditions, but you can keep animals in a lot of places that, you know, crops aren't viable many of the months of the year. So yeah.
Oh, I remember like during harvest season was brutal. Holy shit.
I
It was
bet.
bad. We worked until 11 midnight, almost every night until everything was done.
Mm.
And it was tough going because crop season was around September, October, so it was starting to get cold.
And
Right.
there it would get colder quicker.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
September is more or less harvest season. We'd start all the harvesting, and it wouldn't take because we had people helping as well. So it's not like it would take weeks. It would take a few days, but it was long days. You were there until like 11 o'clock midnight, you know. And on the last day, we would just sort of finish up and then just, you know, go around to build a campfire and start having some beers, including me. And I was like only, what, 10 years old, 11 years old. Yeah, it was fun because I was helping. I was doing, yeah, I was driving the fucking tractors. I was driving the trucks and everything, you know. I learned how to drive when I was 8 because we lived in the farm. Right.
You grew up quick. You grew up
I
fast.
Yeah, I could barely
You
sit
had
with a
to.
fucking dash.
You had to. You had no choice.
Yeah, you had to in the farm. You had to. It was all hands on deck in the farm.
Speaking of crops, Matt, what's the most ideal environment to build a crop circle?
Well, it's wheat and barley. Rapeseed is usually the first thing to appear, but it's a big, thick crop, so it crunches when you try to sort of push it down, and that means it's quite hard to push down, and it makes rougher edges to circles, so they tend to look a little bit more rough. But you know, the color's quite striking, so you get interesting looking crop circles appear in rapeseed at the beginning of the season, but then as the wheat and the barley come up and mature, they're a lot easier to push down, and yeah, so that's normally towards the end of the season. But those are the ideal crops: is barley and wheat. But if you start making a crop circle in barley and wheat when it's young and green, it will start coming. It'll grow back up because it's still alive. And the crop has still got a lot of growth left in it, so it'll start to correct itself back up towards the light, and that's where you get these nodal bends. They keep on talking about magic nodal bends, which is just the knuckle of the plant. And if you press the plant down, so if you sort of push it down at one of the knuckles, it'll start to grow then back up towards the light from that point.
Okay.
And that's where they get these magic bends, you know, that appear. And people say, "Oh, humans can't do that because, you know, why would the crop be sort of like lifting up? That means that whatever pushed it down in midair, you know." But that's not true, because when it's pushed down, 2 or 3 days later, it will be starting to grow back up, because the crop grows like an inch. I think it can grow to like an inch every couple of days or a day. You know, in the spurt cycle, you know, it starts off as a little piece of grass in the field, and then when it starts to grow, it's like an inch every day. If you time lapse it, it grows really quickly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, towards the end of the season, it's still alive, but they kill it off with you know, weed killers. They actually, before they harvest, they spray it with I don't think it's not insecticide, but it's I think they call it Roundup. You know, it's
yeah, Roundup.
and because you're about to round up the crop, so it's Roundup. You know, you kill the plant becomes brittle and dry, and then it's easy to chop with the combine. You know, it goes down, chops up nicely, and is nice and dry. But yeah, you know, if you work at the beginning of the season, all the crops will always bounce up, you know, and you'll have these nodal bends. Towards the end of the season, when the life cycle is kind of slowed down and it hasn't got much more left in it, you push those plants down, they stay down. So you get a much neater looking circle that remains flat instead of bouncing up. And then right about when the crop is just about to be harvested, if it's been sprayed as well, then that's not a good time because the heads will droop. So that's usually when they want to sort of harvest. Is you look if the heads of the plants are still up, then it's not mature. But once the heads of the barley and the wheat start to droop, that means it's reached the end of its life cycle, and then they would be spraying it to kill it off and quickly get it into the harvest, and get rid of it. So if you try to make crop circles in things that have got drooped heads, it's like Velcro, and instead of the crop going down nice and neatly, so it makes a nice neat swirl pattern, all the heads kind of stick together. So when you push it down, they all sort of crunch and sort of mesh, and it gets messy. So all the heads, instead of lining up when you flatten it, it's all kind of mishmash like that, and it looks messy. So it looks messy at the beginning of the season because it bounces back up, and it looks messy right at the end of the season because the heads are like Velcro and they don't go down well. So, but most places in the UK you can grow. I mean, from Scotland all the way down to south coast, the temperatures, there's not much of a variation.
Yeah.
So yeah, but people only really make crop circles around Wiltshire and Hampshire because it's traditionally where it's been done.
Oh, really?
There's no reason why people couldn't be making crop circles in Scotland and Cornwall. It's just because around Stonehenge and the magical areas of the UK, that's where it was deemed nice to make crop circles. So yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No, I was going to say, you don't believe in the magical area of Stonehenge? Come on.
Oh no, I believe that these places are magical, and they've got special interest. But I mean, there are sites that are just as exciting as Stonehenge that don't get so much attention, all over the UK.
I don't doubt that whatsoever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? That was one of the things when I came over to London back in 2019, and I was only there for a week, unfortunately. But I wanted to go exploring so badly outside of London, and I never got a chance to do it, just because I did. If I were to rent a car there, I'd probably get into an accident the first day out of the lot. So I'm not used to driving on the other side of the road. Yeah. So I just kind of stuck to the city, and we had friends that lived in London, so we they kind of drove us around a couple of times, but I never got a chance to explore outside of London, unfortunately.
I don't know if there's even a crop circle sort of thing in Canada, is there? I've never really followed anything.
Let's have a look.
Maybe.
I mean, there probably is, but I have never really looked into it, to be honest.
There's a page here talking about Canadian crop circles. Edmonton.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Edmonton had a crop circle. It looks kind
a
of
Manitoba
messy.
farmer stumbles on a mysterious marking in 1990.
Yeah.
There you go.
But I mean, I think it's just if you're lucky enough to get some people who live in a country that want to emulate, what they're seeing, in the UK, which is predominantly where these things have appeared. You'll get them all over the world, but you won't get them in the numbers. They'll be in the 1s to 2s rather than the 50 to 60. Or like you can get like maybe 20 a month in the UK, and when you add it up, I mean, it's probably like about 100 plus circles in but in a very tight area. While you may only get like 1 or 2 in Canada, 3 or 4 in the US. It's just down to where the people are that want to do them. Interestingly, I know some of the Italian circle artists, and I think they're not doing so much anymore. They've had their fun, and they've kind of retired now, so there's not so much happening in Italy. But
it'd be interesting. Like I said, listening to you several times talking about making them and how that works out. It's pretty interesting. It's an interesting thing, and I mean, like you said, the experiences that you had while making them. Sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, I believe 100% in the magic of the crop circles. People like myself and others get a calling to do this. We don't know where the calling comes from, and then you put something down on paper and you think, oh, that I designed that. So you think, right, that, but then when you actually put it out in the field, you find out that other people have been kind of having premonitions that is going to appear. So where's this idea coming from? And are we all picking up the idea? Just some go out and make it, but lots of people are getting that message, but some go out and make it. And then weird things start happening when you've made that crop circle.
So Kristen just had an episode about that on her podcast.
Yeah, well,
circles, and she was talking exactly what Matt just explained about getting this sort of like.
I told Kristen to reach out to Matt. I don't know if she's reached. I don't know if she's reached out to you.
She did, but we haven't arranged a time yet to do the show. So yeah, she has done. Sorry, hay fever. It's one of the reasons I stopped making crop circles, because even though I got the air conditioning on here, I'm just in the summer months. I'm just like Mr. Snot.
That's one thing I'm glad I don't have too bad anymore. Yeah. I was so bad. I was really bad, especially in the spring. Oh,
yeah.
Summer wasn't too bad, but the spring just killed me.
Yeah.
All right, boys.
Yeah.
I gotta hit the road.
Oh, okay.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, I gotta wake up early tomorrow.
Yeah, take her easy, man.
Okay. Yeah, you gotta go take care of the farm.
I do. Yeah. Shh, don't tell anyone. Yeah. All right.
Cheers now.
Good night.
Bye.
See you later. Yeah, that's an interesting thing, when you say, a premonition, and from somewhere telling you, okay, make this thing, make it a reality, and I don't think I ever thought of it that way, or ever heard that before.
Well, I mean, so much about the crop circle makers has been secret because it's illegal to go and make a crop circle without the farmer's permission.
Yeah.
But, it started off, so they say, as kind of like being a bit of a joke. Some old timers, wanted to emulate the markings that appeared in Tully in Queensland. There were these crop impressions that happened in reeds. It wasn't even crop; it was like reed land, and so they thought a UFO had landed there. And when it got in the news, these guys called Doug and Dave one of them thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if we emulated those markings they're saying they're getting in Queensland in Australia, if we put those in a crop field in the UK. And once they did that, it was immediately picked up by UFO researchers and the media as being like, oh, look, what's happening in Australia is like happening now in the UK. So this must mean something. And then, it stopped being simple circles. They started to alternate the designs, so it became 2 circles. And this was like, oh my God, 2 circles. And then it became 3, and then they said, oh, it definitely can't be the work of humans, because like, who could make these things at night? It was far too complicated. What, like a simple circle at night, small, rough, but back then people were easily impressed. But
some of the designs, though, I mean, are just so intricate.
They are now, but that's because researchers were kind of saying, well, maybe this is a natural phenomena. Maybe it's wind vortices or an electric storm or something like that. And because the people who were making these crop circles were hearing those types of statements, like, oh, maybe this is a plasma vortices, or it's the weather, or it's some sort of electrical storm. They thought, well, how can we show you that that's not true? Well, we'll put 2 circles, So it's like, well, okay, then the theories change. Well, maybe the plasma vortices comes down and then lifts up and then makes another one. So they said, well, okay, then what if we draw a line between it? So it's no longer circles, now it has a line. So what does that mean? The plasma comes down, then turns into a pencil line, and then becomes a. And so they were trying to always fit the theories of what was making them, to kind of explain it away scientifically, or say, oh, maybe there's a natural explanation for this. So every time they would say, the theory, the circle makers would do something to refute the theory. They would add something to the design. So eventually they became complicated shapes. They weren't just two circles and a line. It would then be two circles, a line, and then like radiating bars. So it looked like a transmitter signal on a mobile phone, and things like this.
Yeah.
And then, then they had keys, which is a key would just be like a line, and then like the letter F coming off it, like, two lines. And they would call that a key, because it looks a bit like a key. And then they were like, well, what does this mean? And the theories, would then say, oh, it must be this thing is etching out marks, the plasma is etching out the marks. And they were like, all right, then, well, why don't we put writing in it? Why don't we make it like a symbol that's recognizable as something that, like from, ancient history, like, something from the Egyptian times and things like that. And it's like, well, how would plasma know about ancient symbols? So they kind of adapted that way. And then they go, oh, so maybe it isn't plasma after all. Maybe it's ancient aliens doing it. Maybe it's the ancient aliens that were the ones that built the pyramids and and they and then it just got more and more complicated. Teams were then, it wasn't just one set of people doing it anymore. You'd had copycats, and each team were trying to outdo each other's designs, but also they're trying to like mess with the minds of the people who say, we're the experts, we know what this is. So it'd always be trying to sort of develop it in a way that it gets more and more complicated. Teams challenging each other to show their art and just what they could do. So it gets quite complicated towards the end, because you've got very, very large, very intricate designs that takes a big team of people to do. You've got a short amount of time at night to do it. Then you even had pictorial representations where people actually tried to put like photographs of things like alien faces and various other things. So they were almost like trying to transpose a photograph into the field.
Yeah.
And replies to the Arecibo space messages which are sent out, the digital messages, putting in replies like that, and things, because it's like, oh, well, we've had a response from space, we send a radio message out into space, which will take hundreds of thousands of years to reach the nearest like star, but we've had a response within 15 years.
Yeah.
But in crop, which is like the signal wouldn't have even got to the nearest star, in the time that this reply has been received. So, and then they say, oh, well, that's weird, because maybe that means the aliens are more local. They're actually in our local system around, our sun. Maybe they're around our sun then, they're not actually that far away, but where are they? So these aliens are hiding closer than we thought. And there's always some theory will come out there to kind of explain what it is, but ultimately, the people who are making them do feel inspired, to do these certain designs, and it seems to have some significance for the people who are looking at them. But even weirder is the strange stuff like UFOs seen hanging around above them, and people saying that they were looking at that field all night long, and they didn't see any lights down there. Well, they wouldn't, because who's going to start shining a torch around when you're making a crop circle? You're going to get seen.
Yeah.
Spotted. But they would say, well, I woke up in the morning and there was nothing in the field, and then I made myself a cup of tea, and then I look back and then there's a crop circle in the field. So it must have appeared within 15 minutes in the morning. And they don't take into consideration things like mist over the fields in the morning, and the fact that maybe when you wake up and you're tired, your eyes are kind of a bit blurry and you just don't see it. It's a bit like somebody sent me a painting earlier on, and it was literally just a dipped oil painting. You put oil in, and then you put paper into the oil. You lift it up, and it creates all these nice shapes and colors. And randomly in that, if you look, it looks like there's a dragon and eyes and a dragon, but it's just randomly pulled out of the water. And it's kind of, so unless you get pointed out, unless somebody actually points out to you, look, there's a crop circle in that field, a lot of people don't spot them. They drive past in their cars, and they kind of glancing around and they don't see anything. And then they drive past later on and the sun has come up higher, and then they suddenly see it. Morning light is usually very flat, quite bland. And then once the sun comes up, then things start popping, like images start, boom, they pop out. So unless something has been pointed out to you, there is a crop circle in that field there, you might think it wasn't there in the morning and it was there by midday.
But I mean, that's another thing. Like how easy are these things to spot from ground level though?
Well, if you've got a hill nearby and a pretty good indication of where the best fields are, because they've got hills.
Yeah.
So there's a drop off so that people on a hill can look down and they can see the design.
Yeah.
If you make a circle on a flat area where there's no vantage point, it'll often take a lot longer for people to find that circle unless they're flying over in
overhead,
aircraft.
Yeah.
And people do, they fly every day looking for new crop circles, and they're like, oh, I found it first. It's like, well, I can pretty much guarantee you that the people who made it found it first, but you're kind of like second because you took an aircraft up. But the people who made the crop circle, obviously they were there, they saw it first. But there's a race to kind of be the first to find a circle, and sometimes they don't get found for days and weeks. It's surprising, because the area to be covered, there's the classic area where most of them will appear, and you'll get the pilots will take people up and they'll fly up and down in like zigzag, to try and find if there's new circles. Well, you're going to find those really easily. But if you do it outside the area that the pilots would normally fly, I mean, sometimes they don't get found for weeks. So much so that the circle makers get worried that, if somebody doesn't actually find it, that the crop might start growing up and it's going to look messy. When they finally do find it, it's going to look ragged because the crop's bouncing up, either through natural growth or, other reasons. But so if nobody's finding that circle and a week's gone by, the circle makers will often, say they'll put out a false report, under a fake name, and they'll say, oh, I was walking my dog this morning and I found something that looked like a crop circle, but I don't know what it is, and the location's here. And then the crop circle researchers will go out and go, oh yeah, it really is a crop circle, but it's been there for a week and nobody found it. So the circle makers have to tip them off, to kind of get them to find them.
I think I asked you this before, but I can't remember what the answer was. What, like, percentage wise, crop circles are man-made. What was the percentage? Pretty much. Right.
We always do. Yeah, it's a complicated one, right? Mostly we used to say that it was like 20% that we didn't make, and the reason we did that is because they could always ascribe the ones that were rough looking to being human, and the ones that look really good, they would say, well, humans can't make that, so therefore these are the golden ones, the magic alien ones. And but the reality is that nearly every crop circle out there, we're talking like 99%, we know amongst ourselves who's made that circle, because we all talk to each other, and so we know who's doing what and when. But as far as the public are concerned, I mean, the non-discerning public will believe everything's real, and they won't believe humans have made any of it. Most people these days will accept that a large proportion are made by people, but they're the crap ones, the messy, the messy ones,
the messy ones,
and just this little proportion then that are kind of like couldn't be done by humans because they've got weird effects in them, like nodal bends and the springiness of the crop. They'll actually they'll say that's a real effect. That's oh yeah, look, no people have gone in there because it's sprung up. Now, if people had made that, there would be damage. There would be damage on the crop, and you'd see lots of footmarks all around the crop. But it's like, and the dust hasn't been dislodged off the plant because, and that's a fallacy as well, because the dust that is on the plant often will reform when you've had a night of condensation, and then the condensation is burnt off by the sun again, and the dust reforms. So a lot of those marks aren't there. Some people say, oh, there's no, if it's been raining the night before, they'll say, oh, there was no mud on the crop, so people couldn't have made it because there was no mud showing footprints or board marks on the crop. But again, it's like, well, if it was raining the night before when you made it, it'll also wash those things off the crop.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but people will use these things as, evidence that people couldn't have been involved. But there's usually a very good answer for why, why those effects are there. But the researchers often play in the old three monkeys, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil,
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, what it just baffles me that, what would really attract a person to go out and all of a sudden, like you said, some people have premonitions or whatever else, they kind of go out and do it. But I mean, what would get a person to just all of a sudden, besides that, go out and say, hey, I want to make crop circles?
Well, you might bump into somebody like myself, and we might be out in the pub, or places where people will be hanging out that like crop circles. We'll hang out in the same places, so we get to overhear what they're all talking about. So we're all. It's funny how the circle makers and the circle believers are often very close to each other, but they don't know who the circle makers are. So we're listening in for kind of, oh, that's what they're saying. Oh, this is what they're saying, and then if there's a particular theme that people are talking about, well, if we overhear that, we might put that theme into the next circle. We'll try and incorporate it. So they'll go, we knew this theme was happening, and now look, it really is happening. It's like, because we hear what people are saying. But the whole premonition thing and the idea, like to sort of get up and go out and make a circle, well, I don't think that happens to people who've not made a crop circle before. Because you'd already have to be somebody that was making crop circles before you start getting those types of, I've got to get up and do something, premonition type effects. But it's happened to me enough times. It's happened to a number of other people that I know as well. And I've just been sort of in the house. It's getting late. There's no way that I can get a team together, because you can't ring people. You can't ring people at 10 o'clock at night and say, "Hey, come out, make a circle." They'd be like, "Oh, tomorrow." Let's, tomorrow, not tonight. So, but it's happened to me that I've been sitting there, doing something quite mundane, and all of a sudden just felt like boom, like a light had come on in my head, and I have to go out and make a crop circle tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm thinking, well, nice idea, but I'm not going to be able to get a team together. Like my brain, the voice in your head is kind of going, that doesn't matter, just go and do it anyway.
Just go do it, yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, but how am I going to do it with just one person? Because you normally need somebody to hold the tape measure, to start scribing, and then the voice in your head says, yeah, you could use a tripod, you could weigh a tripod down with some weights, and then you could use that to be as the person. Okay, you may have to make it smaller, because if you're holding a tape out over a long distance, it's still going to pull the tripod over, so it's going to have to be smaller. Where am I going to do it, because I'm not prepared.
Mhm.
And then you get the idea, do it maybe this place, because that had good crop, and that you can probably park the car quite nearby. You can be in and out in an hour, and finish it, so it's going to be quite convenient, and so your brain is telling you these ideas,
Yeah.
thinking logically that would be a safe place to do it, a quick place to do it, convenient place to do it, it's the right type of crop. So those are all logical things. So you think, oh, that's my thoughts, when you get there and you find the field, or I'm going to describe one event that happened to me then, near Avebury, which is a stone circle like Stonehenge, but actually a lot bigger than Stonehenge.
Okay.
So I get there, park the car, walk into the field, and I can hear voices. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, so maybe there's somebody in the field, so I have to be a bit careful here. And I can hear somebody playing the guitar, and I'm like, oh, so they're probably camping. Okay, somebody nearby is camping, so they can hear me. If I speak, they would hear me, but they don't hear you when you're making a crop circle, because the sound of crunching crop is kind of like the sound of air, night air,
Yeah.
and it gets absorbed. So you could give yourself away very easily by just saying, John, like, or psst, psst, John, and then somebody would hear you. But if you're crunching crop, they don't hear you. So I know from experience that I'll probably be safe, as long as these people aren't too close. So I think, right, okay, let's walk in, and then you get this feeling, and this is proven to be quite important actually. Many times you get a feeling that, right, this is where I should do it. You're walking along the tram lines, those machine tram lines that you get in the fields, and then you just feel like, right, this is it, this is where I do it. So you set up your stuff, make the circle, and you can still hear these people chatting and playing the guitar, and you're like, okay, so I got away with it. Nobody's nobody's the wiser. And I'm thinking to myself, I bet in the morning when they wake up, they're going to be surprised, if they see that. Yeah. To go home, go to bed, wake up in the morning, and then through the grapevine, there's internet sites. It's like, check out, has anybody found it yet? And there's nothing on the early morning stuff. So I drive up to the pub in the afternoon, and just like for the gossip, has anybody seen any crop circle, sort of thing. And I find out, oh, there's a new one. Oh, where's that? Oh, it's up near Avebury. Oh, really? Of course, acting like you don't know anything about it. And it's like, and they're saying, yeah, but the freaky thing is, it came down so close to these people who were there all night, and they didn't see or hear anything. So that's really weird. And they were praying for that design to appear, and it appeared. And I'm like, whoa, hang on, that's a bit weird. And I'm thinking, like, is this just bullshit? Because like people will, make up stories about how they found a crop circle and what happened to them. Sometimes there's bullshit, and sometimes people can wake up and not see that there's a circle there, and then the mist clears and the light gets up better, and then so there's a circle, bang, there's a circle. So there's always elements of either bullshit or misunderstanding, with them, But I thought, this is an interesting, more than your usual type of story, that these people said that they were doing a prayer session, and they were willing a design to come down, and it was very similar to what appeared in the field. Or later on found out it was pretty much bang on exactly what they were asking for. So I said, well, who are these people who were there? And I actually knew some of them, and they didn't know that I made crop circles. So it was still very safe for me to sort of just find that person, give them a call and say, hey, I heard this story. You were nearby where a crop circle appeared, and you were sort of like asking for it to appear. And they went, yeah. I said, well, what's the deal with that then? What were you doing? And they said, oh, we were literally meditating, all asking for this design. And I said, so you were sitting in the field nearby meditating? Yep. And I said, so were you making any noise? Maybe you didn't hear the circle being made because you were making noise. And they said, no, we were completely silent. And I'm like, hang on, I could hear voices and I could hear playing guitar. Now, they weren't playing guitar and they weren't speaking. They were silently meditating, wanting that design to appear.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, right, there's like a two-way mirror thing that goes on with making crop circles. And we've had protection from something other that's allowed us to work really closely to people and they not see us and not hear us. And it's even more than just the fact that the crunching sound is absorbed by the night air. Yeah, it's more than that. We'd be able to I can't get the bloody words out. where we've made the circle, there have been people doing a sky watch. So they're not sitting there on the ground meditating in a circle. They're actually, doing sky watch,
Look at the
looking
watch in the sky. Yeah.
And it's a lot brighter than people think. On some nights when the moon is out, I mean, you'll see people in the field, no problem at all. It's that bright. But there was on one occasion, I'm going to come back to the other story, but on one occasion we were able to do one where they should have been able to see us. No two ways about it. We could see them, so they should have been able to see us. However, they saw nothing. And in the morning, they said that there was a mist patch over the field. And when the mist lifted, there was the crop circle. Now, we could see them all night long. And there was no mist. So how does that
weird.
work? Yeah.
That is weird.
So it's almost like as if you get some sort of protection to do these things. Anyway, so going back to this this one, I said, so there was definitely nobody making any sound. Nobody, nobody sort of, you're not kind of baffling yourself with making noise. And they were like, no, you're perfectly silent. I'm like, okay. So I gave it some thought, and after a while, I decided, because I knew this person, that I would actually tell them that it was me that made the crop circle. And by the way, the design they were asking for was the design I made.
Okay.
Now, so a bunch of people are sitting in a field meditating quietly, asking for a design,
and then you made it.
And I'm in my house, and I suddenly go, I must go out and make a crop circle. I think of the design, and I think it's my idea. I think of a place, and I think that's my idea for the place.
Your mind is being slaved.
Yeah. And then you walk into the field, and you feel like that's the place you need to stick it. And it turns out that there are reasons that that's an interesting place where you've done it. Quite often, people will walk in the middle of the night to absolutely huge fields, and then they feel this is the place where they need to go and start doing it. But at night, you can't really tell where you are. You're in a rough area. You can see a hill. You can see that hill and that hill, but you don't know where you are. But you think, this is where we need to start. So you finish the design, and in the morning when people are flying and they get the coordinates, they say, well, that was exactly the same center spot. Bang, was one appeared 3 or 4 years ago. And how did the people walking along in the middle of the night, just walking, this feels right, let's start here, bang. Well, that to me is like a natural form of dowsing without dowsing rods.
Yeah.
You're using an inner dowsing sense to kind of know where to stick the thing, and the inspiration that you get to do the designs often can be from somewhere else. But you'll attribute it to yourself, because you've actually drawn it. So you think, well, that's my design. And sometimes when we've made mistakes on paper, you have one design, but then you cock it up, So in order to hide the mistake, you put an extra piece on the crop design, and turns out the mistake was what was originally being asked for. Some people are meditating on the design, that has the mistake, but you made a mistake, so you had to cover it up and turn it into something that they were already asking for. So what you think's a mistake was what was originally being asked for.
Yeah.
You
So,
know?
I mean, just describe that
Yeah.
what you like, your feelings, I guess. What you feel. How does it feel when you're putting this, this design together, this crop circle, if you will, to put it like sort of rough. Like what's going through your head? What's your mind, and how do you feel? Like, describe the environment as you're doing this sort of thing.
Well, I mean, there's a whole range of feelings from sort
Yeah.
of like excitement because you're with a bunch of your mates.
Yeah.
It's it's like there's a danger factor because it's like you don't want to be spotted walking in with boards, and is anyone watching us, and this sort of stuff. And then once you find the spot and you want to start, some people have to sit down and wait because like until you've scribed things in, a few people aren't needed, so they just kind of sit down and they chat to each other or whatever whilst you're making the initial design. So some people are getting cold because they're not doing any work and it's chilly at night,
It's chilly,
so they're sitting there in coats, huddling, like this, chatting, whilst the people who are actually scribing, we're sweating, we're warm, so we don't have to have the same amount of clothing on. So there's like, whether or not you're working, sometimes people would prefer to work because it can be boring sitting out and waiting. And then there's I know what you're getting at. Do we feel anything weird when making things? Once or twice I have, and it's been connected with some really unusual events as well, which was it was raining, and we'd planned to make the circle, but it started raining, and that's a bummer for me. It puts me off because I'm going to get wet and it's going to be colder. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm not in exactly the positive state of mind that you'd think, because if we're taking part in something that ends up being magical, you'd expect that our heads are going to be magical and we're all going to be like, wow. And it's like that. It's not like that. It's much more practical when you're there.
Yeah.
So it's raining, it's cold. I'm pretty pissed off at the concept that we're going to do it. I'm really feeling like, why am I doing this? Why, like I must be nuts. I must be nuts. Like, why didn't we just put this off for another day? But then we can't get all the people together because some people have got jobs and it's hard to get the team together. So you have to make the best of what you can. And then, so we're making the design, and I'm getting grumpy in my head, and I'm instead of maintaining a positive frame of mind, I'm just grumping about everything, in my head.
Yeah.
And but because I believe that we've had protection from being spotted, we've also had UFOs and things seen above these areas. People get healed in crop circles, and the general atmosphere of what the crop circles are about, for whatever reason those designs are meant to be there, is positive. But sometimes you can actually be a little bit negative when you're out there because of the environment, because I get hay fever, it's cold, it's a lot of work, it's effort, and so I'm in a bit of a bad headspace. But because I believe in the reality of the whole thing, I have a dialogue between me and it, whatever it is out there, and we've incorporated this certainly in my team into, before we make the circle, we do a little oration, we used to call it, and we just sort of all stand in a circle, and before we actually start work, we just say, right, universal intelligence is out there looking down on us. Please guide us, give us the inspiration to put the design down correctly, and please give us some protection. And if there's any weird experiences that we can have tonight, we would love to have them. That, and it sounds twee, but that then would try to put everyone in the same headspace, because we're all kind of on the same page, why we're there, what we're doing it for, and sometimes I'd say, like, if it was a rainy night, I'd say, like, it's raining tonight, so hopefully we can all kind of, feel like we've got some positivity and, make this a good circle, but there's me then out in the rain making this circle, and I'm a bit grumpy because of it. So I'm fighting against this, thinking just ignore that. But I'm having a dialogue with this other, the other thing in my head. I'm saying, um, could you just, like, back off with the rain, please? Because I'm getting really, really pissed off. It would be really nice if it wasn't raining, and I noticed that about over 5 or 10 minutes that the rain dies down, and it's more like mist now than rain. And I think, oh well, that's good. I'll have some of that, because if it stays like this is going to make my life much happier now, continuing making the circle. So I'm like, that's good. And then we're doing bits and pieces, and then I come to the edge of the field, and I notice, or seem to notice, it's raining, but outside the circle. And so I put my hand outside, and I'm getting wet, and I pull my hand in, and there's no rain. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I look up, and there's an oval shape in the cloud above us, black oval, and it's holding there, and the clouds are moving, but this shape is in the clouds, but it's staying in one place. And I'm like, hello, you've done this, you've stopped it raining, that's really cool, thank you. And I'm like saying that in my head, like, that's really cool. And then I'm like, hey guys, come here, and the guys come over, and I say, it was raining earlier on. And they're like, yeah. And it's not really raining now, is it? No. I said, stick your hand outside the crop circle. So it's like, huh? And it's like, stick your hand out. It's raining. And I said, yeah, it's not raining in the crop circle. It's raining outside the crop circle. Yeah. And I said, and you know what else? And they're like, what? I said, look up. And everyone looks up, and there's the big the oval shape is in the cloud. And I said, do you notice that the clouds are moving and that's staying in one place? And they were
wow.
and like everyone's getting chills at this point, like, they're all getting quite buzzed up and excited. So what does it feel to make like a crop circle? 99% of the time it's hard work and it's boring, but there are times like that when suddenly you think, wow, we're taking part in something really amazing here, and we're being shown something that it doesn't seem like it should be physically possible. Like, there's no way it shouldn't be raining in the circle, it rains outside, and what's this thing? And then you just get an internal glow then, like an amazing sort of feeling, like, yeah. And then all kind of worries about feeling tired and cold gone, because you're buzzing. You
You mentioned this sort of strange protection that seems to cover you guys. Is that always the case? So I mean, has there ever been an incident where shit's gone array and some things went down and you're like, oh fuck?
Yeah, people have caught us making the crop circles. Usually only ever happens in the very, very hot zones where people are expecting circles, because they always appear. So they're watching the fields, and not just watching the fields. Some people are actually walking through the fields to see whether or not they are there when the circle appears. And they just stumble into you doing it, and they go, oh shit, what's going on here? And there was a guy called Rod Bearcloud. He's a sort of Native American Indian guy, and he came down off the hill. Perhaps he felt a calling to go down, because he hadn't seen anyone making a crop circle, but he felt, I'm going to go down to that field. So maybe he was being called, intuitively to go to that area, like we were, to make a design. And he walked in and just saw people making a circle.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
luckily, he wasn't angry and incensed, because that often can happen.
Mhm.
And he said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they're like, "Well, we're making a crop circle." And he said, "Well, you know, but people can't really make the real crop circles. This is just going to be one of those crap ones." No, 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 it's going to be a real crop circle. You'll see. And they said, "Look, it's up to you what you do. You can tell people that we're here, and then we'll have to stop, right? Or if you want to, you can just sit and watch us continue. And then the best thing you can do in the morning is wait to see what everyone else says about the crop circle, because it's man-made. Don't tell people don't tell people it's man-made, and just observe people's reactions." So that's what he did for about, I could be getting the details of this slightly wrong, but I think he didn't initially tell people, that it was man-made. And everyone was saying, that can't be man-made, and they were coming up with all the various things. And then he piped up and he said, "Actually, I saw the people who made this." And what happened? He was a beloved researcher. Everyone loved Rob Bearcloud, and they went for him like a pack of dogs. They were like in for the kill, because he was now saying, "Well, I watched people make this circle," so he's debunking the circle. And people have already said, their reasons why it couldn't be made by people and how amazing it is and all this sort of stuff. And so they went for him, and he had a little taster of what it's like to be a circle maker, because if you keep your mouth shut, everyone's happy. But if you open your mouth and tell people, "I made that," or "This is how it could be made," vump, the pack of dogs comes in and starts savaging. And he experienced that, and that's how it works. That's how.
And that's what I was going to ask. I mean, you certainly. I mean, do you want to keep it within a certain frame of people that you trust and that you work with all the time when you do these circles? Because I guess you don't really want to, people to see, your routine or how you actually make these. I mean, I know a lot of people probably know already, but I mean,
Yeah.
you may have a certain way of doing it that others don't do it, and you have that trademark, and you don't want people to know it, sort of thing.
I would say trademarks are just like levels of experience, like how long you've been doing it,
Yeah.
and how prepared you are to try new things, and they're not really secrets amongst the circle makers, because we'll all discuss how we've done it. But like I did a thing called the basket weave effect, and it hadn't been done before. And
Okay.
I just got an idea that it would be more interesting to layer the crop going up, down, up, down, up, down, and then cross back, cross back, cross back, cross back. So it becomes like stitching, it's
Yeah.
the same sort of, yeah. And the effect was really amazing. But at the time that I was suggesting we do something a little bit more interesting, it was scoffed at by at least one very experienced circle maker, and he said, at the end of it, he said, "Oh, you've ruined this. This is now a mess. You've ruined this. This is now shit." And convinced me, by the end of it, that it was a bad idea. I shouldn't have suggested it. However, when the planes got flying in the morning and they took the photos from the air, this was like the best thing since sliced bread. Woven crop.
They have never seen that before.
Yeah. And people said, "Well, that definitely can't be done by people, because I mean, look, it's going under and over and under and over." But it's not. That's an optical illusion of how it does that. When you pull back on a photograph, it has that type of effect. But on the ground, you can see that it was laid in lines up and down first. So it was vertical lines first before you do the horizontals. That's all it is. But it looks like weaving, but it's not really woven, under and over. It just looks like that. But it's funny how like that experienced circle maker, he's very, very good at what he does, and some of their artwork has been spectacular. Like some of the pictorial faces, they've actually that team have done things where they put photographic images into fields, and that's very, very hard to do, especially in the
yeah.
dark. But he'd never had the idea of putting this weaving pattern type of stuff in there.
Yeah.
He was just an old school flatten it down and just flatten it in one direction, flatten it all in one direction, like combing,
Yeah.
And I just said, well, no, why don't we just mix it up a little and sort of like put this layered effect in there, why don't we do that? So yeah, I can't remember how we got onto this particular thing, but yeah, we'll pick it up again and we'll train of thought. But yeah,
Well, yeah, it's funny. It took a mind of its own, but it's interesting because like the thought of going out in the middle of the night and building or producing this fucking a piece of art, really, and being so precise on such a grand scale, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work to figure out how to do that.
yeah. Well, inexperienced circle makers, and I used to be one, thought that you could use rope. You
Yeah.
could rope is exactly the wrong thing to use, and nylon twine is awful because it stretches. So there's a lot of stretch in it. So
Yeah.
when you're holding that out over a distance, and you're expecting then to scribe a nice neat circle, what you'll end up is with something that looks like a cookie cutter, because it'll
Yeah.
be stretching in and out, stretching in and out. So I spoke to a circle maker team and I said, look, we made this and this, but it's looking shit. And how do you get it looking so sharp? And they said, well, what are you using? And I said, oh, rope. And they said, oh, no, use surveyor's tape measure. I'm like, well, why is that then? And they said, well, because it doesn't stretch. It's infused with fiberglass and in such a way that it's really hard to stretch it. So over a long distance, you get a fairly accurate measurement, And I'm like, okay, so, £10 later at a hardware store, I got my little surveyor's tape measure. Bang, the next circle we did, really, really clean, and it's just little things that to a lot of people, you may not make sense. So their first circles will be messy, but once they pick up the tips, or they go and have a look, listen to what people are saying who talk about making them, and we have shown people. There's always been demonstrations over the years, but people will mock them and go, oh no, that's crap, it's not like the real thing. When they see you make it, it's crap. But when they don't see you make it, it's made by aliens. So yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's amazing how a crop circle and the story behind it takes a story in itself. Yeah, aliens made it, and realistically, no. But I mean, the thought, it's more whatever, exciting that, oh, look at this was made by some advanced alien civilization. They travel all the way here to build this crop circle.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder whether I choose to see them as a little bit more than art. It is art because it's a design,
Yeah.
but I think it's more than art because much like you get the stone circles and you get special places, Egypt, the pyramids and things like that, you get things that are they're meant to blow your mind. That's why they're there. They're made to impress. So if you get the right design, that'll impress people. But if people go there and they get healing from it, that'll impress people. But that's the circle makers didn't do that. If you get a UFO scene above it, whilst we're making it or in days afterwards, again, that's impressive, but that's not us. We're not doing that. So it's kind of like, I have to ask, where's the influence coming from? Where's the idea, the inspiration that pops into your head for a design, or the feeling to go out to that part of the field? That's where you must do it. And you find out that it's the same place that they've been appearing for years in exactly that spot. but we're not using a GPS to get us to that location. We're literally just walking out until it feels right. And you go, let's start here. Put the first mark down, and you end up you're putting it in exactly the same place. So what are we dealing with then? Are we dealing with energy lines, earth energy lines?
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe ancient man was putting Stonehenge and Avebury on places that they were dowsing or felt, you know, they had a feeling this was the right place. You know, maybe you'd have a very tuned in person like a shaman or somebody like that would have a feeling about a thing or a place, and they would say, well, no, this is a sacred place. So in order to commemorate this sacred place, we're going to put stones here and mark it, you know, and then we're going to come out and we're going to do ceremonies here, and we're going to, you know, pray here to the gods and this sort of stuff. And I suppose circle making kind of is a rediscovery of some of that, what I've called land magic. You know, I didn't coin the term, but I see it as kind of like land magic. What you're doing is you're using the landscape and putting a design there, and together there's a new synergy, a new kind of energy is created, you know, by the people who visit it, the people who worship in it, have experiences in it, have healing, see UFOs, all of it, you know. And some people have the premonition that it's going to appear there as well. You know, some people are willing it, they want it to appear, and then somebody goes out and makes it, you know. So again, where's that coming from? Is it all coming from somewhere upstairs, you know, and it's coming down to me, and it's coming down to the people who think they've got the idea for a design and meditating on it. Yeah. I then think, well, okay, it's either coming down from upstairs or it's coming from person to person or group to group as kind of like a form of telepathy. So one group is having the idea, another group goes out and does the idea. But what you could say, if you think about it, is what gave them that idea in the first place? Why did they pick that design? Maybe they're being influenced on the design, and we're being influenced on the design, and maybe it isn't group to group telepathy. Maybe we're all getting the idea from upstairs. So I think it's a sacred art form, which is why I say it's more than just art. It's sacred art, and it involves an element of land magic, you know, that the ancients used to kind of do a lot of stone building and ancient sites put on these special places, and it works.
Only with you crop circles, right? I mean, yeah, it's yeah, I think I would like to think that frequency, yeah, absolutely plays a huge part of that. You know,
And it's positive, you know. I mean,
yeah,
the only time it gets negative is when people admit to having made them, which I've done, you know, show people how it's done. You know, it kind of like it snaps people out of that spell they're in, because they get into this kind of like alien hysteria, like God hysteria. And that's a great headspace to be in. It's like a natural drug, if you like, you know, that kind of like, wow, you know, the aliens are talking to us. I'm sitting in it now. I can feel the energies, you know, and then you'll have some experiences, you know, you have experiences or healing or something will happen, you know, and that's all good. It's all positive.
so
But it just gets negative when you tell people about it.
well, I was
when
going
you
to say,
talk about it. Yeah.
so when you started telling people and showing people and stuff like that, what kind of back did you take any backlash? Like what
Oh yeah.
how were people that you normally would discuss this stuff with? How were they like with you after you started telling people?
Most of them disowned me.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of then distrusted me, you know, and
Yeah.
thought that anything that I was talking about was, you know, not to be believed. You know, you could tell people about how it really happens and how amazing stuff happens. You know, we the circle makers experience it, as well as the people who visit the circles afterwards, and a lot of it falls on deaf ears. It's taken a lot of time, you know, it's taken an awful lot of effort against an amazing amount of negativity for me to actually, you know, start to plant this seed of, the circle makers are not the bad guys. The circle makers are just the pencil for a cosmic artist. And that's and anyone can be involved. I mean, I'm nothing special. I'm sure I'm no different to any other circle makers out there. We're all just human beings. We're all just sort of normal human beings. However, when you take part in doing something like that, magic gets involved. Energies get involved. And then that makes us as circle makers feel that we've taken part in it, but it doesn't belong to us, because whatever guided us to do it, that's really, the origin of where it comes from. We can't take credit for the UFO. We can't take credit for healing. We can't take credit for, strange effects that happen. All of that is real. But we can, because we know to ourselves, because we usually have to keep it quiet, we know we made it, So we get the warm feeling of knowing we made it. We have some weird experiences, but everyone else they get off on it, and that's what it's for. I think it's designed to attract people to have positive experiences.
I'd love to fucking go out and try making one of these things. It'd be pretty cool. It'd be pretty interesting.
It's hard work.
I believe it would be, yes.
And you've got to be focused on what you're trying to do. So you've got to, if it helps, I suppose, if you've got a visual type, an artist's mind, that you can kind of position yourself and work out in the dark. It's not totally dark, but you've got to translate what's on paper into a massive form. So being able to measure, understanding about radiuses, diameters, circumferences, angles, and because we sometimes use a little laser that can save time. To use a little laser on a tripod, and you can get nice straight lines because you walk the laser line. People can't see the laser because it's too dim. So we use various little techniques like that, but we don't use GPS, because GPS it's just not accurate enough. Anyone who pulls out a phone and tries to stand in a place and it'll be saying you're moving around and you're bobbing about. Well, that accuracy is not good enough to make a crop circle unless you've got some sort of military GPS or something. But
wouldn't that take away from the experience though too? You using GPS as well?
I tried to make a design once with a GPS.
Oh, okay.
And I gave up halfway through because it was all I was being sent to the left and to the right. It's just not accurate enough. It's just the best way to do it is with tape measures and with stomper boards, just wooden boards to flatten it down. And to make the lines, you just walk along with your feet. So those are the pencil marks, are just your foot line where you're walking sideways, pushing the crop down, side stepping, but the tools you need are minimal. You get better with time. So your initial ones are going to be basic and rough, and they're going to get better and better and better, and you'll just hone it into a sort of better art form, and you'll collaborate with other teams. They'll share some of their ideas with you. And if they can see that you're doing something that might create a mistake, they'll say, don't do it like that, do it like this, and you get a better effect. And it's like, okay, so you kind of you all share and learn off each other. And some of the teams I've met, some of the artists are not very mathematically minded, and they're not very artistic in real life. They're not into art. And they struggle a little bit because they literally do not know how to translate that measurement into scaling it up into using a tape measure. So they use more basic methods where they like tie a mark, or they put insulating tape. They mark the tape measure with insulating tape because they don't know how to kind of scale things up. So they reel out the tape until they see a little mark, and they go, oh, that's Mark 1, and they use that as a measurement. And then they pull out the tape to Mark 2, and then that's a measurement. And some of these teams do struggle, and they make mistakes. They do make a lot of mistakes, in fact, and I can spot it very easily. But I can spot the mistakes in most crop circles. But to the untrained eye, people don't see. They can't see it the same way we see it, because yeah.
That's cool, man. Like I said, it'd be interesting to experience and do something like that. It's always been obviously a thing that's intrigued me for years, but never, like I said, I've never really noticed any of that around here. I know there probably is, but I mean, I've never really was seriously looking into it, other than
Well, I started doing it to experiment, because, like yourself, we're looking for answers, and I thought that it was possibly aliens. So I came down, I found out it was people, and I just wanted to meet those people and find out a little bit more. But they're very, very shy to talk to outsiders, because they know they'll get attacked, for revealing anything.
Revealing stuff.
Yeah. But like the best way to befriend a circle maker is to go out and make a couple of crop circles, and then when you approach a circle maker, you can say to them, "That was me, and that was me," and they'll go, "Oh, we wondered who that was, because we know everybody who makes the circles, but then these two appeared and we didn't know, and we were like, oh right, that's you. Okay, great. Now we know you're a circle maker." Like, they might ask you a few questions, to kind of like, because you can ask some very basic questions of, well, how did you do this and how did you do that? And if you're not getting instant answers, that the person might be lying, and they're not really a circle maker. But it's kind of like, you can easily like work out that they're a circle maker, and once they know you are, then they'll start to share tricks and tips. So
yeah, it's
so you'll be on your own if you do it. You're going to be, there's not. I'll tell you some tricks and tips, but I'll be here in England. I won't be able to be out there in the field with you.
I'll have to FaceTime you or something. Matt, how do you do this? I can't figure this out.
Yeah. And nothing worse than panicking. When you're trying to do what you've got to remain calm, because because people start double guessing each other and saying, no, I think it's meant to be like this. No, I think it's meant to be like this. And it generally helps that you've got like at least one person at the helm who's experienced, who's got the design and knows what they're doing. And everyone else just falls into being told what to do. And that can work quite well when you've got too many too many chefs, but not enough cooks. Then you get problems. So but yeah, try it. And it doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be on a super scale. Start small, start simple, but just watch how, if the story gets out there, and if it doesn't, you'll probably tell people where the circle is, like we do. And then once people start coming, see how that story unfolds and what people say about it, what they get from it.
It's well, I mean, when I started researching and investigating the paranormal, I was like, what are you, fucking nuts? Why? And this is before all the hoopla. Before all the hoopla and TV and all that kind of stuff. So people looked at you. It wasn't quite out. It was out there, but not in the open like it is now.
Yeah.
But people are like looking at you, go, what are you, part of some cult or something?
Yeah.
No, I just want to know. I just want to know what's going on. I mean, something's going on, and I want to know.
Yeah. And that's right. And I mean, I wanted to know how what was going on in the minds of the circle makers, because and I wanted to meet them, and then by meeting them, I kind of got to get better skills. And then once the circle started getting, complicated enough and interesting enough, weird things started happening. So then I started asking these circle makers, well, has anything ever happened to you that's weird? and I started getting all the stories coming from them about what was happening to them, and I thought, well, it's really sad that the circle makers are kind of, the the kind of the heroes of this, in that they're making the circles, but ultimately no circle maker really wants to own that work and say that's mine, and I own that. When they finish, they give it up, and they hide away, they retreat, and then they let everyone else decide what's going on with that circle. So it would be interesting as a sociological experiment for yourself to do something and just watch how people come in and how they react, and the stories that come out of it, and how it takes on a life all of its own, and you have no control over that. You only have control over putting the design down. Everything else is out of your hands. You no longer own it. You only own it for the time when you're making it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's awesome. I think we're going to end it on that note, Matt. Thanks again.
No problem. I can talk for hours and hours and hours. In fact, I had a show called Circle Makers TV where there's at least 72 hours of us talking about our weird experiences when making circles.
And
so
where is it? Where is it now? Is it on the?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, there's like all the circle makers, faces people have never seen, and talking about the weird stuff, because I think that's, people need to understand that we're not doing it for a joke. We're not doing it to fool people.
Yeah.
Most circle makers are doing it because they feel what they're doing is real.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to kind of speak to the circle makers from that perspective, because TV programs, they're just like, so you're artists, you go out, you make art, great, and they don't get in deep with the philosophical sort of underpinnings. And I think what happens to circle makers is just as weird as what happens to people who visit the circles afterwards. But I would say I've had a lot more paranormal things happen to me making crop circles than I have standing around on hills looking for UFOs.
Well, I'll definitely have a look at that now that I know that's out there. Cool, Matt. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
Awesome. And everybody in chat, thanks for popping in. Blood, Cal, Melissa, Gareth, Smith, ZZKG, Jay, and all sorts of people. Thanks for popping in. Until next time, good night.